I'm just going to start with an initial.
Thank you for having me.
Not at all. What do you think are the key considerations? If I'm an amateur company wanting to do an outdoor performance in a public space in a park, give me a list of 5 key considerations I need to start thinking about right from the get-go.
The first thing that I think any local authority would like to see in an incoming inquiry is enough advanced warning, is receiving enough notification of your intention to organise an event, that there is time to then achieve everything else that needs to be done before the event is delivered. So getting in touch with the council as early as possible, or the landowner, it might not necessarily be a council, lots of outdoor spaces are run by trusts or community interest companies, but giving them as much advance notification possible is absolutely key to the success of any project, so they can give you feedback on your initial idea. What I would say is that very rarely at that stage does your proposal need to be fully realised or fully developed. So go in with a degree of flexibility in mind as well in terms of your proposal. The people that will be approving your event or activity will probably think things similar to this before, because they'll be managing a number of spaces if it's on behalf of a council, and they'll have had other theatre groups contact them looking to do outdoor production. So they're a good resource for you, and they should be willing to offer you advice and guidance on maybe the exact location within the park that you would like to, consider using. So having an open mind and a degree of flexibility in your own plans would be certainly worthwhile. And then leading on from that, I would say that you're being able to demonstrate from the off what you have in mind in a concise way is also really important. Most council officers would ask for a demo proposal or just a few paragraphs in an email, to give them an overview of what it is you're looking at achieving, and being able to do that early on is really useful. So definitely looking at that, and then having a familiarity with the site. So do a site visit, get down there, look at the space you're looking at using, and start thinking straight away, how can you use that space? At the end of the day, you're the event manager, and that space is your blank canvas, and the council officer should be relatively open hearing about exactly what your vision is. So having carried out a site visit in advance and saying, we've been to this site, we'd like to do it here, but this is looking at doing, but we are open to feedback from you. That's definitely key. So I think that's 4 things that I've covered, and I think I'll leave it there because I wouldn't want to be overly prescriptive. I don't think a council officer would want to be overly prescriptive either, because the event planning process is dynamic and fluid, and like I said, I think being flexible to a degree and being willing to adapt is key to any outdoor event plans.
Good. I'm jumping the question a minute, but do you see councils primarily as regulators or as enablers?
That really depends on the council, I would say. Personally, in the event umbrellas approach, so just to add to what Howard said earlier for those listening, we are contracted by a number of local authorities to manage their outdoor spaces on their behalf. And one of our selling points to councils is that we say that we act nurture event applicants. We want to, from the moment we receive that inquiry, we want to support that event organizer in putting on their event, taking it from initial concept through to completion. And that's a really we get a positive response from the event organizer because of that. We make sure event organizing is accessible as possible to as many people as possible, and it also improves the sustainability of events, because people have different backgrounds, different knowledge sets, and nothing should we don't want anything to be a barrier to people being able to organize an outdoor event. definitely some councils are proactive in that way and nurture their applicants and want to curate their programme. Other councils do have a reactive service, which is there, like you said, how you put it, as a regulator. They'll receive the applications, they'll process it, box ticking exercise, and they'll expect certain things from you before they'll give you permission. So I can't give you a clear answer, but there are two distinct approaches that councils take, and generally speaking, the closer to the centre of London, I think everyone here is looking at organising in London, aren't they? So the closer you get to the centre of London, the more proactive the more proactive approach will be taken. And on the outskirts of London, where perhaps they've had fewer events, a less diverse programme in their parks, they'll probably be more reactive and focus just on regulation.
Great, thank you. Some of the outdoor events and theatrical events that you've seen, Alex, the ones that have worked really, really well, what have they got right in their planning? And what in their planning do you think has contributed to that success? And where have you seen examples of poor planning making it all fall apart?
Yeah, so in terms of with my council officer cap on, what makes a competent event organizer is experience, training, qualifications, and the fourth one, which I hear very often, is recognizing your own limitations. That's something that the Emergency Planning College, who do a lot of development for health and safety and things, produce a lot of guidance. They say recognizing your own limitations is really key to being a good, competent event organizer. And theatrical productions that we have hosted in our parks before, one really good organisation that I'm sure some of you will know is the Richmond Shakespeare Society. They do.
They're here. Yep.
Production.
They're represented.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. Yes, they're here.
Fantastic. Hello.
Simon Barker. Yeah.
Hello, Simon. So my Cora you probably deal with in Richmond.
We do indeed. Yes.
Yeah. So she was there. I used to work in Richmond many years ago, almost 10 years ago now. But I remember the productions going on in there, and you guys do a fantastic job. So well done for that. And one of the things that is really key is recognizing your own limitations, and what comes with that, and I'm sure Simon will agree with this, is working with suppliers and organisers and fostering good positive relationships with them and looking to them for their advice and guidance. So I know one of the things that in advance of this talk that Jane and Howard were mentioning to me was things like, how many toilets should you use? Well, nobody expects amateur organisers to know exactly how many toilets are needed for any certain type of event. But if you're booking toilets from a reputable toilet provider, they should be able to work with you on that. They'll have seen the type of events that you're doing before. They'll be able to ask you questions like, is food and drink going to be on sale? What's the duration of the event? How many people are going to be there? And then they can give you feedback, and you can take that feedback to the council and say, well, we've been working with our provider who have all these credentials and experience, and they recommend this. And so we're following their advice and guidance. And that's the same with your staging provider, your lighting provider, your sound provider. Work with these organizations and listen to them, and they'll help you realize your vision for the event.
Thank you. Many of our audience today, Alex, will be considering a lot of smaller scale productions, not very large ones that will need hundreds of toilets and big stages and big lighting and more health and safety considerations. They might be doing something, even a Punch and Judy puppet show. They may be doing something like some street theatre. And I'm sure there are still permissions that are needed for something really small scale. What sort of things mustn't we forget for those? For those sorts of small scale things, one
what I would recommend, if you were looking at doing something particularly small scale, low impact, and doesn't have the typical things that would maybe be red flags for a council officer, so that would be amplified sound, sale of alcohol, what else? Maybe close proximity to residents, or things that would normally trigger a sort of, oh, well, we might need to look into that a bit more. If you don't have those, and please don't be deterred by what those things that I just said. If you do have those, that's fine. But if you don't have them, there'll certainly be an easier process to get approval. Then I would speak to the council about different opportunities where they might actually be looking for placemaking or activations to activities that support council strategies in other areas. So they might be looking to activate their town centre to encourage footfall into that area, in which case then half might be done for you. And having that conversation early on and saying, well, actually the regeneration team for Hammersmith and Fulham are really keen to get Shepherd's Bush Green used by different activities just to raise the profile of the area, in which case you might get a lot more support in that location than if you were looking at another one. So definitely put that on the council's radar as early as possible, and half the work might be done for you.
Excellent.
If for small options, I'm sorry if I'm going over ground that maybe a lot of you know about already, but with your theatres, you probably all have premise licenses for those theatres, which is the license for entertainment, so the theatrical performances and the sale of alcohol, and some of you might be licensees. But what you can get for smaller productions are temporary event notices. And temporary event notices, some of you be familiar with these always, what people don't often realise about them is you're not actually applying for permission in submitting a temporary event notice. The clue's in the name. You're notifying the council of your intention to hold the activity, and then it's on them to object or not. And very rarely do they object. That process is really straightforward, it's really easy, and it's the same in every borough. It costs £21 to get that license, and it covers you for up to 499 people. And you only need 10 days notice to submit that to the council. I would still recommend getting it in much earlier than that, because if it does receive an objection at all, you want time to replan or find another venue or something. But yeah, that's a really easy, straightforward process to get a temporary event notice.
Alex, is there a difference between maybe some of our audience members attached to theatres know colleagues who have very, very large gardens, which would be private gardens? And I've actually seen an opera company use a garden here in central Ealing when Granger first started. Because you're on private land, do you just ignore all permissions, or are you still actually covered by permissions you've got to get from your council?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So with putting on any activity anywhere, whether it's in a garden or in a park or in a town square, sometimes needs more than one permission. And being given permission for one thing doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get permission for that. A good council will try and streamline that process so that you're going through one department or one team and it's as straightforward as possible. Unfortunately, it doesn't all work like that, and you need to speak to multiple departments to get a permission. If you were thinking about doing something in your garden and you were inviting members of the public to a performance, you would still need a temporary event notice at the very least for that performance. And you because you're the owner of the and it's your garden, you already have the landowner's permission. You would think. So temporary event notice would be the main thing, I think. And like I said, it's very straightforward to obtain that. I wouldn't want anyone to be put off or deterred from that idea, because it's really easy and really affordable.
And you wanted to do it in your own theatre's car park or grounds? You've already got a license for your theatre. Do you have to extend by going outside of your theatre? Maybe it's because you're making a noise which you're not when you're indoors.
Yeah. So with the license that's already that you already have for your theatre, you probably will have had to submit with the premises license application at the time a plan that shows the licensed premises. And if your car park is included in that plan, then the car park is licensed, and you should be fine to hold the performance as long as you meet the conditions of your premises license. But what I would say is licensing officer in your local authority, again, as early as possible. What is interesting seeing coming out of the pandemic is that changes were made to licensing, or exceptions were made around, you see it most easily in the pubs, where pubs that would normally not allowed to have drinking outside on the street in front of the building have been granted that permission because it's the only way they can operate. So have a conversation with your licensing officer as soon as possible. Tell them what it is you're looking at doing, and they might say, oh, at the moment exceptions are being made and performances and theatres are allowed to move into their car park, and will temporarily view it as that license is granted for the car park as well. There might be questions asked around noise, but again, that's a conversation that can be had. And if you go in with an open mind and a degree of flexibility, you can look at perhaps slightly earlier performances. Will you need amplified sound, for example? Is it necessary to have music before or after the performance, or in the interval? You know, there are changes you could make it more palatable or less of a concern to the council, which means that, you know, it often is the case, if you finish half an hour earlier as a compromise, and the officer says, well, that's something, and we recognise that you're doing this for maybe a 10-day run or something, it's only temporary, you know, they'll have that conversation with you, and there's no reason why you can't ask.
Okay, Alex, thank you very much. I'm sure we will have some other questions coming up for you as we continue our Q&A. But just before I hand over finally to Jane, I just want to say a big thank you to all the speakers that participated, and I hope that you will stay around and continue to answer the questions from our audience. Jane.
Thank you. I must admit, the only extra question so far, a Yorkshire-based theatre wants to know whether a temporary event notice is a thing or whether it's just London. Alex.
No, yeah, good question. It's the same all over the country. Most councils have actually subscribed to a central government portal. So it's actually the same website that you visit to apply for it in most London boroughs as it would be in Yorkshire, I think you said. So if they haven't subscribed to that portal to do it through that one location, then certainly they'll have a form on their website, link on their website to their own portal or their own process. But it'll ask you exactly the same questions as everywhere else in the country, and will still cost £21, and will still need notice to apply for that. One thing I would add, because it might provide some additional information that's useful to some of you, not everyone realises, and encounter quite often, that people don't know that any premises can have more than one licence. So your theatres all have a premises licence, and let's say that gives you a finish time of 11 p.m. If you wanted to, you could apply for another premises licence or a temporary event notice for the same theatre at midnight, and it wouldn't interfere with the other licence. You'd still have to pay the same fees. That licence would still exist, but you can have multiple licences covering the same location. And that means you can be quite creative with things like temporary event notices. So if you have a premises licence for your theatre, and the car park is covered, but it doesn't quite give you what you need, perhaps as you're looking at doing a morning performance and your premises license for the theatre only starts at midday, then you can submit a temporary event notification for the thing, and in the same location. Again, it wouldn't interfere with the license, it wouldn't jeopardize anything or cause any conflict.